What if I told you you weren't randomly placed in a narcissist's life? And even more shocking, they weren't randomly placed in yours. You were selected for this experience, not as punishment, but as preparation. It's time we talk about the truth no one is saying out loud, because everything you thought you knew about your toxic relationship is about to shift forever. You see, narcissists don't just happen to people. They're magnetically drawn to something inside you, something powerful. And if you're watching this, it's not a coincidence. You're not weak. You're not naive. You're not broken. You were targeted because of your light, your empathy, your depth, and yes, even your unresolved wounds. But here's the plot twist. What if the narcissist wasn't here to destroy you, but to awaken you? What if they were the trigger that would activate the next level of your evolution? Not to justify their abuse, never, but to recognize that this pain is the portal to your power. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why it happened, what it unlocked inside you, and how to never repeat the cycle again. So for you, skip or scroll, pause, because the truth you're about to hear might just be the truth that sets you free. Stay with me because this gets deep fast. If you've ever wondered why narcissists seem to be drawn to you like a magnet, the answer goes far deeper than just bad luck or a lack of boundaries. In truth, narcissists are incredibly calculated in who they choose, and they rarely pick just anyone. They're attracted to people who radiate what they lack: empathy, authenticity, emotional depth, and light. They don't want to become those things. They want to feed off them. You may think you're too nice, too forgiving, or that you simply didn't see the red flags. But the truth is, your kindness, your desire to fix, and your deep emotional intelligence were never flaws. They were exactly what the narcissist was looking for. They sought out your light so they could dim it, manipulate it, and use it as a source of validation for themselves. And the reason they targeted you isn't because you're weak, it's because you're strong. You had qualities they couldn't emulate, so they tried to control and consume them instead. But it doesn't stop there. Narcissists are masters of energetic detection. They can sense unresolved wounds, especially childhood wounds of abandonment, rejection, or people-pleasing tendencies. If you've ever felt the need to prove your worth, earn love, or fix others to feel secure, you unknowingly became their perfect match. Not because you were asking for it, but because you were trained, maybe for years, to normalize dysfunction and overextend yourself just to feel safe. This is exactly why narcissists don't go after just anyone. They avoid people with rigid boundaries, low tolerance for manipulation, or who don't seek external validation. But someone who's deeply empathetic and still learning to honor their own needs, that's a prime target. And here's where the deeper spiritual truth kicks in. Sometimes we attract what reflects the parts of us that still need healing. The narcissist often mirrors back the pain we haven't yet dealt with, the part of us that still thinks love must be earned, or that being chosen means being good enough. It's a hard truth, but a powerful one. Because once you see the pattern, you can break it. You stop blaming yourself. You stop thinking you were too emotional, too loyal, too naive, and you start realizing you were just tuned into survival mode, trying to give love in hopes that someone would finally give it back. But narcissists don't operate on reciprocity. They operate on control. And now you know that. Understanding why you were targeted is not about assigning shame. It's about reclaiming power. You were chosen because you're the type of person who can rise, someone who learns, heals, and transforms. And once you step into that awareness, you become untouchable, not because narcissists disappear, but because your energy no longer matches what they feed on. Keep watching, because now that you know why they came into your life, it's time to understand what they were meant to teach you. There comes a point in your healing where you stop asking, why did they do this to me? And you start asking something far more powerful. What was this here to awaken in me? That's the doorway to real transformation. And as hard as it may be to believe right now, the pain you experienced wasn't just chaos. It had a deeper purpose. Not a purpose to justify abuse, but a purpose that can liberate you if you're willing to look at it from a higher perspective. When you cross paths with a narcissist, it often feels like your life has been hijacked. You lose your sense of identity. You question your reality, your confidence, your voice, your truth. All of it starts to unravel. But here's the hidden truth that very few people talk about. Sometimes destruction is part of divine redirection. Sometimes the universe allows the old version of you to be cracked open, so the version of you that was never allowed to exist can finally rise. Think about who you were before this relationship. Were you still shrinking to keep the peace? Were you over-explaining yourself, over-giving, and undervaluing your own worth? Were you living life on autopilot, convincing yourself that being chosen was more important than being honored? If so, the narcissist didn't just expose their darkness, they exposed your silence, your neglect of yourself, the parts of you that needed to be reclaimed, not abandoned. Pain is a powerful awakener. It will take you to places love never could. It will shatter illusions, strip away false identities, and force you to confront the truth that you were never meant to live in survival mode. You were meant to rise, to remember, and to return home to yourself. Spiritually, the narcissist often acts as a mirror, reflecting back not who you are, but who you think you need to be in order to be loved. That's why the relationship feels so confusing. You're constantly molding, shifting, and performing for approval that never comes. But that frustration, that exhaustion, that soul-level ache, it's not weakness, it's your soul rejecting the lie. It's the call to awaken. Sometimes your soul will allow you to be broken by something you can no longer tolerate. So you finally choose something higher. And often, the only thing strong enough to force that kind of awakening is a relationship that hurts you so deeply you can no longer pretend you're okay staying small. This is the spiritual purpose behind the pain: evolution. You're being pushed to evolve beyond old patterns, old trauma cycles, and generational conditioning. You're being asked to break contracts that were never yours to carry. You're being guided toward a new way of living, where love isn't earned through suffering, but received freely in alignment with your truth. And once you start to see this clearly, something incredible happens. You stop trying to win the narcissist's approval. You stop replaying every conversation in your head. You stop wondering if you were ever enough, because you realize you were never meant to be enough for someone who feeds on your emptiness. You were meant to remember that you were already whole. This pain wasn't pointless. It was an invitation to rise, to return, to rewrite the story, to become the version of you that doesn't just survive heartbreak, but turns it into fuel for a life so aligned, so unapologetic, and so rooted in self-worth that narcissists can't even access you anymore. So don't just heal, transcend, because this pain was never here to break you. It was here to build the real you. One of the most painful and confusing aspects of being in a relationship with a narcissist is the fact that even after everything they did, you still feel connected to them. You may know logically that they were toxic. You may even be aware that they lied, manipulated, gaslit, and broke you in ways no one else ever has. But somehow you still miss them. You still wonder if they'll come back. You still find yourself checking your phone, remembering the good moments, and questioning your own sanity. That's not love. That's a trauma bond. Trauma bonds are formed in relationships where abuse is paired with intermittent reward, moments of affection, love bombing, or apology that come right after a cycle of emotional or psychological harm. It's like being emotionally starved, then suddenly given just enough validation to keep you hanging on. Your nervous system becomes addicted to the highs and lows, and over time, you start confusing the anxiety with passion, the drama with love, and the pain with meaning. What's happening on a neurological level is similar to addiction. Every time you receive a breadcrumb of affection, your brain releases dopamine, a feel-good chemical that temporarily soothes the wounds the narcissist caused. You start craving the relief they give you, even though they're the ones who caused the discomfort in the first place. It's a cruel cycle, one that makes you feel powerless, needy, and ashamed. But it's not your fault. You were conditioned, manipulated, trained to seek closeness from someone who was never safe. That's why it feels so hard to walk away. You're not just leaving a person, you're detaching from a pattern that your brain and body have learned to rely on for emotional survival. And that's where most people get stuck. They confuse trauma bonding with soul connection. They mistake intensity for intimacy, and they keep going back, not because they're weak, but because their nervous system hasn't learned what peace feels like yet. But here's what you need to know. Just because you feel drawn to someone doesn't mean they're meant for you. Just because you miss them doesn't mean they were good for you. And just because walking away hurts doesn't mean you're doing the wrong thing. In fact, if it feels like withdrawal, that's exactly how you know it's a trauma bond, not love. Healing from this kind of connection requires radical self-awareness and compassion. You have to stop judging yourself for the feelings you can't control and start honoring the strength it takes to not act on them. Every time you choose silence over texting them, every time you journal instead of spiraling, every time you say no to going back, you're breaking the bond. And with each boundary, each choice to sit in discomfort instead of running back to chaos, you're reprogramming your nervous system to recognize safety as love, not suffering. It won't be easy. Some days you'll want to go back just to feel that momentary high. But what's waiting on the other side of that pain is worth everything. Freedom, peace, clarity, the ability to trust yourself again, to choose people who respect your soul instead of exploiting your wounds. Trauma bonds are powerful, but so are you. You're not broken for staying longer than you should have. You're not foolish for missing someone who hurt you. You're human, but now you have awareness, and awareness is the beginning of liberation. Don't rush your healing. Don't shame yourself for the pull you still feel. Just keep choosing you, because every time you do, the bond weakens and you strengthen, until one day you wake up and realize the spell is broken and you're free. One of the hardest truths to accept after experiencing narcissistic abuse is this: the narcissist didn't just reflect their darkness. They mirrored something inside you too. Not because you're like them, but because relationships are energetic mirrors. And whether we realize it or not, the people we attract often reflect the parts of ourselves we've disowned, abandoned, or forgotten. The narcissist is a master of illusion, projection, and manipulation, but they are also a mirror to your unmet needs, your hidden wounds, and the subconscious stories you've been carrying. The mirror is not there to shame you. It's there to show you what still needs to be healed. When the narcissist invalidated your feelings, it exposed where you may have been invalidating your own. When they crossed your boundaries, it revealed where you struggled to enforce them. When they gaslit your reality, it forced you to ask why you felt the need to constantly question your own perception in the first place. The reflection is painful, but powerful, because it gives you the opportunity to reclaim the parts of you that got buried under people-pleasing, perfectionism, or fear of abandonment. It shows you the silent contracts you've signed, like "I'll stay quiet if it keeps the peace," or "I'll tolerate this just to feel loved." The narcissist didn't create those beliefs, they just activated them. They mirrored your desire to be chosen so deeply that you abandoned yourself in the process. But here's where the shift happens. Once you recognize that mirror, you no longer need it. You start to see that the narcissist wasn't your punishment, they were your pattern. And patterns can be broken. You weren't meant to stay trapped in a cycle of chasing love from people who only know how to take. You were meant to look into that mirror, see the pain, the unworthiness, the people-pleasing, and choose something new. Choose yourself. Choose boundaries, even when they're uncomfortable. Choose walking away, even when it hurts. This is what makes the mirror sacred. Because as much as it showed you where you were wounded, it also showed you where you are powerful. If the narcissist reflected your need for external validation, they also revealed how deeply you crave authenticity. If they mirrored your fear of being alone, they also revealed how powerful you become when you are truly connected to yourself. The relationship may have started as a trauma bond, but it ends as a mirror that cracked wide open the illusion you were living in. It shows you how much of your identity was shaped around being enough for others instead of being true to yourself. Healing doesn't mean you stop seeing the mirror. It means you stop reacting to it. You stop trying to fix it. You stop blaming the reflection. You start turning inward and asking, what am I really seeking? Most of the time, it's not their love. It's your own voice saying, you matter. You're worthy. You don't have to earn love by bleeding for it. Once you truly receive that, once you integrate that knowing into your body, your soul, your nervous system, the mirror stops being a trap. It becomes a teacher, and you realize that the narcissist never had the power. You did. They reflected the storm. But now you reflect the healing. And what you reflect is what you attract next. There comes a moment in every healing journey where you stand at a crossroads. You can either continue repeating the cycle or you can break it. Not just intellectually, not just emotionally, but energetically, spiritually, and behaviorally. This is where true reclamation begins. Not in the knowing, but in the choosing. Breaking the cycle of narcissistic abuse doesn't start with the narcissist. It starts with you. With the moment you decide that chaos is no longer acceptable, that your peace matters more than someone else's approval, that you are done giving your power away to people who only show up to You don't break the cycle by getting revenge or by waiting for an apology that will never come. You break it by no longer abandoning yourself to keep the connection. You stop betraying your intuition just to feel chosen. You stop explaining your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you. And most importantly, you stop mistaking suffering for love. The pattern only survives as long as you feed it. Every time you answer the late night message, every time you second guess yourself after setting a boundary, every time you forgive without accountability. But the moment you say, no more, the entire structure begins to collapse. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable at first, because walking away from dysfunction means walking into unfamiliar territory. You'll have to sit in silence instead of the noise you got used to. You'll have to soothe your nervous system without the emotional roller coaster that once felt like passion. You'll have to rebuild your identity, not as someone who survives toxic love, but as someone who knows they never deserved it in the first place. Reclaiming your power means taking radical responsibility, not for what happened to you, but for how you respond from this moment on. It's about drawing a line in the sand and saying, I get to choose now. You choose how you show up. You choose who has access to you. You choose what energy you allow into your space. That's power. Not controlling others, but reclaiming the control you always had over your own reality. And no, this doesn't mean you won't still feel the pull. Trauma bonds don't dissolve overnight. There will be days you miss them, days you question yourself, days where healing feels like grief. But the difference is, you no longer act on those feelings. You witness them, you honor them, and you remind yourself that just because something's familiar doesn't mean it's safe. The most powerful thing you can do isn't becoming stronger or harder or more guarded. It's becoming more aligned. When you heal, your energy shifts, your frequency rises. You stop attracting people who need you to shrink, perform, or self-abandon to keep their love. You start drawing in people who meet you in your wholeness because you finally believe you're worthy of it. Breaking the cycle is the most courageous thing you'll ever do because it requires you to face the parts of yourself that made the cycle possible in the first place. It's not about shame, it's about truth. And from truth comes freedom. This is your invitation to stop replaying the story and start rewriting it, to stop surviving and start thriving. You don't owe the past any more of your light. You owe yourself a future where your power isn't hidden beneath pain, but amplified through purpose. You were never powerless. You were just conditioned to forget. But now, you remember. And when you remember who you are, the cycle ends. When you're in the thick of it, when the pain is raw, the betrayal is fresh, and the confusion runs deep, it's nearly impossible to believe that any of this could hold a gift. How could something so devastating, so disorienting, possibly leave behind anything worth keeping? But over time, when the noise fades and your soul has space to breathe, you begin to see what was always there, the gift hidden inside the chaos. This wasn't just destruction, it was revelation. It broke down the illusions you were taught to live by. The illusion that love must be earned, that your voice doesn't matter, that your needs are too much, that tolerating pain is a necessary part of being loved. These lies, many of which were planted long before the narcissist, were exposed, unraveled, and brought into the light through the intensity of what you endured. The gift isn't the narcissist, it's who you became despite them. You emerged with sharper intuition, a deeper connection to your inner voice, a new level of emotional intelligence that can't be taught in books, only earned through experience. You learn what manipulation feels like, how gaslighting distorts reality, and most importantly, how to trust yourself again. That's something Most people spend their entire lives avoiding the raw, radical truth of who they are when everything fake is stripped away. The chaos revealed your resilience. You survived what tried to break you. And while it may have knocked you down, it didn't extinguish your light. If anything, it clarified it. You're no longer willing to accept crumbs. You've outgrown the version of you who begged to be seen. You are no longer interested in convincing someone of your worth. That clarity, that's a gift people spend lifetimes searching for. It also forced you inward. For perhaps the first time, you had no choice but to meet yourself, to hold your own hand when no one else would, to rebuild from the inside out. And what you found there beneath the shame, the confusion, the heartbreak, was something sacred, your truth, unshakable, unedited, yours. The narcissist didn't give you that. The chaos didn't create it, but it uncovered it. And here's what's truly beautiful. Once you receive that gift, the pattern ends. You no longer seek out chaos to feel alive. You no longer confuse emotional turbulence with passion. You begin to desire peace, safety, stillness. You begin to create relationships that reflect the love you now give yourself. That shift in energy, that's everything. Because what was once a wound becomes a doorway. What once felt like a curse becomes the catalyst. And what once broke you open becomes what broke you free. You may never get closure from the narcissist. You may never receive the apology you deserve, but you can give yourself something far more powerful. Meaning, you get to choose how this chapter ends. You get to choose what you carry forward. And you get to choose to rise. So no, you didn't deserve the pain. But you do deserve the healing, the growth, the clarity, and the new life that waits on the other side of this. Because in the end, the gift hidden in the chaos wasn't about what you lost. It was about what you found, yourself. If you're still here, listening, reflecting, healing, it's not by accident. You didn't stumble into this experience or this truth randomly. You were chosen for this path, not because you were weak, not because you were naive, but because your soul was ready to awaken to something far deeper than the surface of this world could ever offer. Being in a relationship with a narcissist doesn't mean you're broken. It means you were brave enough to love deeply, even someone who didn't know how to receive it. It means you saw light where others only saw darkness. And while that light may have been taken for granted, drained or abused, it was never lost. It's still inside you, stronger now, wiser now. The truth is, not everyone is chosen for this kind of awakening, because it forces you to wake up, to see beyond the masks people wear, to look within even when it hurts, to confront your patterns, your shadows, and your deepest fears. This kind of experience doesn't just hurt, it transforms, and transformation is never comfortable. But it is always sacred. You are chosen not to be punished, but to be refined. Through this pain, your empathy has deepened, your discernment has sharpened, your voice, once silenced, is rising again, clearer, bolder, unshakable. You've been cracked open, not to fall apart, but to let the light in, the same light that will now guide others out of the dark. You are not just a survivor of this story, you are the alchemist of it. You've turned pain into purpose, confusion into clarity, and heartbreak into healing. That is no small thing. That is a spiritual victory. So if no one has told you lately, I see you, I honor the road you've walked, and I need you to remember this. You were never meant to stay broken. You were meant to break free, and now you finally are. This isn't the end. This is your becoming.